We have Filling in the Gaps of the Prehistoric Otay Mesa Landscape by Haley Chasteene. My name is Stephanie Sandoval, and I'm the Public Archaeology Director here at the San Diego Archaeological Center. Before we proceed, just a reminder that we have 2 upcoming events in December for our Living Room Lecture Series. On the 3rd, we have First Chicken Burrito, Avian Remains from the Presidio by Dr. Aaron Sasson from the San Diego Natural History Museum. And then on December 10th, we have A Day in the Life of a Physician in the Renaissance by Dr. Phil Gushinsky. All of those details and registration you can find on our website at www.sandiegoarchaeology.org. For today's talk, we're going to have you keep your questions until the end, and then feel free to unmute yourself and join the discussion. Or if you prefer, you can pop your question in the chat, and Dante Franga will read that for you. I'm pleased to have Haley with us today as she presents her research. And what is especially exciting is that she used collections curated here at the center. So for all those students and professionals out there, even though we are closed to COVID, we are still able to facilitate any research projects you might have. So please contact us for any requests. Haley Chasteene has been working as a professional archaeologist for the last 9 years and currently works for Caltrans. After completing her BA at SDSU, she continued her studies at the University of Glasgow in the UK and has just recently finished her master's in archaeology. So Haley, welcome and thank you, and I will turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I see some familiar faces, so nice to see you. And thank you for coming out to watch this. So I want to also thank you, Stephanie, for the introduction, and thank you to the center. Anyone who's involved with the center has been hugely helpful for this. Because of the pandemic, my dissertation idea had completely changed, and I had to move back home from school and restart. So the center was great. So thank you, Cindy, and everyone else for helping me out. So I kind of want to give a background real quick before I get into my PowerPoint of how this dissertation came about. So this lecture will be about my dissertation that I just completed for the University of Glasgow. And like I said, there was some major limitations that I had because I wrote this dissertation in about 3 months, 3 to 5 months of writing. So it was a lot smaller than what a lot of other people would be able to do with their dissertation. So also, I wanted to remind that it is an unpublished dissertation. This was a graded dissertation. And because of the gray literature, I was only able to get so much material from the center, which was a lot, but still there's definitely probably even some gaps in my own research because I was only able to access what I could. There was a lot of things I wasn't able to access. But the center obviously helped a lot with that problem, but still those were some of my limitations. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, just pull up my PowerPoint real quick. Okay. So here we go. So yeah, the title of my dissertation was Filling in the Gaps of the Prehistoric Otay Mesa Landscape. Basically, this is a case study where I wanted to bring in multiple components in order to show the Otay Mesa landscape in another way, another lens, if you say. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So it's a case study involving X-ray fluorescence sourcing of Santiago Peak Metavolcanics. It's also about the continuum of steeped edge unifacial tools and a little bit about cultural resource management and how their practices in San Diego kind of affect the Otay Mesa landscape. Sorry about that, I was muted for a second, there we go. So I'm gonna go ahead and read out this abstract real quick. I'm not gonna try to read the rest of the PowerPoint, but just because it's quite a bit of information that we have to get through. So the prehistoric Otay Mesa landscape in San Diego County, California has been mostly understood through gray literature produced for archaeological studies conducted by cultural resource management firms, or CRM. CRM arbitrary rules have created gaps in the overall understanding of this landscape by creating interpretations that focus on questions regarding quantitative topics rather than cultural significance or meaning. To combat this disconnect, landscape and lithic procurement theoretical approaches will be applied to the physical archaeological evidence like X-ray fluorescence analysis, lithic technological analysis, and paleoenvironmental reconstruction in order to produce a holistic interpretation of the prehistoric Otay Mesa landscape. A holistic approach will fill in the gaps in research and show that during the early and middle Holocene, the Otay Mesa landscape was an extremely important resource procurement and production hub, which would have been of great significance to the prehistoric people of San Diego. So with that, we're going to move on. So a few things about the abstract. If you don't know what gray literature is, I'll just explain it real quick. Basically, gray literature is anything that's unpublished that's been written for research. So if you're referring to some academic papers, it's gray literature. The reports that are created from CRM is considered gray literature because it's usually unpublished and not available to the public. It's a term I learned in the UK, actually. And also, when I say cultural significance and meaning, I'm not really particularly referring to cultural significance and meaning as we see it now, or even maybe in ethnography. I'm talking about the early and middle Holocene, so quite far away, kind of a cultural significance. So that's a lot. We're going to go ahead and break it down. This is how I've organized it. So we're going to go ahead and look at the theoretical approaches first and give a definition of that. Then go into the modern and prehistoric Otay Mesa landscape, which is going to involve the paleoenvironmental reconstruction, what our general San Diego cultural histories are, and kind of what the general archaeological record of Otay Mesa is. And then we're going to go ahead and get into conversation about Santiago Peak Metavolcanics, and then the X-ray fluorescence analysis that that Eric Cathcart and I produced for this study. So theoretical approaches. So landscape theory is something that evolved from post-processualism, which post-processualism was a direct reaction from processualism. And basically, processualism is hard facts, it's empirical data and quantitative data. And then post-processualism was a movement of archaeologists that came out of that and said, well, what about the individual and creativity? And what about meaning of a site, not just the minimum number of bone or shell. So they still care about the hard evidence, but they also want to remember the meaning, that we're looking ultimately for meaning and what it meant for those people. So it's a holistic approach that goes beyond the analysis of what's physical and tangible. And it tries to focus on how the landscape was having an active role in prehistoric people rather than a passive component. It also usually involves reconstruction of prehistoric environments through pollen or isotope analysis. And it, like I said, it strives for unity of cultural resources rather than separation. And sometimes they also do really large surveys that just go miles and miles. If you're ever curious about landscape theory, if you look up any kind of Mediterranean archaeology, it's really big in the Mediterranean to be able to do large scale surveys with geotechnical survey equipment. So that's kind of the landscape theory portion of it. And so cultural resource management comes into this because it does have kind of a quantitative and arbitrary practice. So even when you're excavating, you go by 10 centimeters, 20 centimeters. And when you're making site boundaries, there's kind of a limit to what you can involve inside of that site boundary. So it's not really based on context all the time, and it's not based on the landscape. So it kind of focuses more on sites rather than entire cultural landscapes. Sometimes it can focus on cultural landscapes, but for the majority of the time, it's about smaller sites. And CRM firms are companies that are there to comply with environmental laws like CEQA and NEPA when there's construction projects that occur in the county. And they have influenced the practice of archaeology quite a bit, and especially the way that we view landscapes like Otay Mesa. So basically, just to give kind of like an overall understanding of why I think it's important to bring up CRM in this conversation of landscape is, if you imagine you're inside of a valley and you're walking down, you see a stream. You walk along the stream and you see a boulder outcropping that has a few bedrock mortars in it. Okay. You walk 80 meters down the same stream in the same valley, and you find another feature that has more bedrock milling features. In CRM, those are going to be recorded as two separate sites, And depending on the company, sometimes they will combine them. But usually they're going to be looked at as two separate sites unless there's some sort of artifact found in between, in the middle there, because there's like a 30-meter kind of rule. So anyway, landscape theory is trying to say, actually, maybe we should consider this entire landscape as the site instead of just two separate features or sites. So that's kind of why I'm giving a background to that. And like I said, it can, especially when you're looking at maps and you see the GIS, there's thousands of little blobs and polygons of what a site is all throughout San Diego. And it kind of gives a static view of how we view the landscape that way. And it can influence our ideas in the way that we practice archaeology. So lithic procurement theory, I'm going to go ahead and go into that really quick. There's two main lithic procurement theory. This is very beginner. I'm just giving it as like an example. So direct procurement is individual or group journey to that area to get that lithic material, whereas embedded procurement is that they found that lithic material as they were moving along. So in my opinion, and we'll get into this more detail, I think Otay Mesa is a very special place. I think that it's something that's really significant and is way more complicated than these two kind of procurement ideas and theory. I think it's a lot more convoluted. So, but I wanted to give you the basics of that so we can move from there. So Otay Mesa, the modern and the prehistoric. So Otay Mesa is a community in the southeast of San Diego. In the 1940s, it started becoming a large farming community. And so most of the area has been absolutely destroyed by farming, the sites at least. So it's actually called the Otay smear because of what's happened to Otay Mesa. You just have lithics and lithics just smeared across the landscape. It's slowly developing, but it is definitely developing. There's some BLM land and some like water district land, but it also, and yeah, if you can see from the photo, it has a direct boundary with the US-Mexico border, which is interesting in its modern landscape, and how it's also affected the way that we see the archaeology. Because when I'm talking about prehistoric Otay Mesa landscape, I want to include Mexico and how that it probably goes further into Mexico. But at the moment, there's not really a way to figure that out. I don't speak Spanish, and the way that they do archaeology in Mexico is much different than here. So that kind of affects the way that we can see the landscape prehistorically as well. One thing that's interesting is Otay Mesa. Otay is a Kumeyaay word, and I've gotten different definitions. I've seen brushy, big mountain. I'm not really sure. I've seen it different places, but it is definitely a Kumeyaay word. And mesa is the word for plateau or table in Spanish. So that's kind of like an overall view. And this is kind of the San Diego cultural histories. I got this from Dennis Gallegos's, one of the case studies in gray literature. So this is the basic cultural histories. It's the most accepted for this region, but everyone kind of agrees that it could go further. It could be later, people, and that the ideas could have changed. The material culture could be different than what we're seeing here. But you can see here, I talk about SEUTs or steeped edge tools. That's this right here. And we'll go into more detail here, but just to have an overview. That's one of these here. So you have the late Holocene, the middle Holocene, and the early Holocene traditions here. So the prehistoric Otay Mesa environment. So my map over here, like I said, this is completely a fluid boundary. This is just me looking at the sites that I had available for this, in the gray literature I had available for this, and going, okay, this is kind of where I'm seeing a lot of these SEUTs. It's large, but like I said, I stopped it at the Mexican border only because I cannot continue it, but I have a feeling that this Otay Mesa environment, this prehistoric Otay Mesa environment that I'm referring to, goes further into Mexico. Also, just to mention that Lower Otay Reservoir is that's not natural. Just if anyone is curious about the water sources in the area, that is something that was brought in later. So the Holocene epoch was from around 11,650 years before present to now. And there's been pollen studies that have revealed that there's been pine and other kinds of oaks and blackberries. They were there during the early Holocene and the middle Holocene. But now, modernly, if you look at the Otay Mesa environment, There are no trees. It's vegetation that was found there does not exist in the region anymore. And also, they've done other pollen studies that have revealed, and isotope studies that have revealed that the early Holocene in San Diego County, especially in Otay Mesa, it was wet and it was colder, and there was dense forests. So there would have been pine and oak, a lot of wood resources. And in the middle Holocene, around 7,000 years BP, a drying event occurred. And so the forest appears to start dwindling. And then by the late Holocene, basically now it's dry and there's no forest there. That could have been because of the farming, but one thing I did notice during my research is that the Spanish had never mentioned that there was a forest in Otay Mesa. So I'm assuming when they came through Otay Mesa, so my assumption is that there may not have been a forest there when they arrived as well. So it may not have just been because the area was farmed, why there wouldn't be a forest there. So the Otay Mesa archaeological record. So I'm gonna go through this here. This picture is one that I took of one of the samples that I was provided from the center. And basically that right there is a Santiago Peak Metavolcanic material. It's got this kind of white patina going around it. It would have been a lot better looking if you take another flake off of that. But that's what a SEUT is, or a steeped edge unifacial tool. So when I say steeped edge unifacial tool, a lot of other people are going to think, what is that? It's a term that I read from Dennis Gallegos, and I've been using it because I think it's more appropriate than scraper, because a scraper, and I got into this in my dissertation, and I'll maybe just touch upon it for a second, but a scraper is really about a function that we're not quite sure of. So we're naming a tool after an assumed function, and that can be problematic. So I like Dennis Gallegos' term SEUT, and I apologize if it's not actually his term. It's just something I read, and I hadn't heard of it before. I read in his case study. So, but steeped edge unifacial tools. So anyway, so the Otay Mesa archaeological record, there's 400 plus recorded prehistoric sites and thousands of isolated finds. That number could have been changed. Once again, I'm going based off of great literature that's been available to me from the center. So this probably is not an accurate number anymore. The Otay Mesa landscape has lithic scatters, large habitations, quarries, and the sites are not well defined because, unfortunately, because of the farming disturbances, what's shown on the surface isn't representative of what's under the surface. Like I said, the Otay smear. And one of the most, the most predominantly identified lithic material that was used by prehistoric peoples is Santiago Peak Metavolcanic in that area. It's everywhere in Otay Mesa. And radiocarbon dates from multiple sites have determined that Otay Mesa was inhabited between 10,000 to 2,000 years before present.
No, that's...
So, like I said, the SEUTs, or scrapers, as you want to call it, they are one of the most predominant lithic tool types, finished tool types in the Otay Mesa region or archaeological record. So now we're going to get into Santiago Peak Metavolcanics. So Santiago Peak Metavolcanic is a term that archaeologists use to refer to this material that's kind of fine-grained. It's medium to very fine-grained. It's great for flint knapping, and if it's in good quality. And it can range in color from black and blue and green. And it's an argued term because a lot of geologists don't agree that we're calling it metavolcanic because they're not actually sure if it really is a metavolcanic or if it's just a volcanic. So if you look at this picture on the side here, this map, that's the Santiago Peak Volcanic Formation, which is where Santiago Peak Metavolcanics come out of. So it goes from the Los Angeles Basin down into Mexico. The major sources in San Diego County are Otay Mesa, Black Mountain, Forest Ranch, Mission Gorge, and San Marcos. In Otay Mesa, the material is fine-grained to very fine-grained, and it's usually a green or a blue. Also, the raw material is interesting because if you go out and see the raw material, the raw lithic material, it has a white chalky cortex around it sometimes. This, like I said, this material is perfect for flint knapping, and it's easily available. You can find it as like tablet nodules just on the ground if you go into certain areas in Otay Mesa. And Otay Mesa is the largest for this high quality material. So Dennis Gallegos lithic analysis. So Of the gray literature I had this one report that was written by Dennis Gallegos for site SDI 8645, which is a large habitation site in the Otay Mesa region, kind of near Black Mountain, or not Black Mountain, near Otay Mountain. And get in here really quick. So I really appreciated this report because it was able to kind of delve in a little deeper than some of the other gray literature I was able to read. And they actually had a lithic analysis of kind of a lot of sites in the landscape, not just the sites that affected their study. So I may have forgotten to mention it in the CRM. When you're doing reports for CRM, you focus, so you get your area that's going to be where your construction's happening. And then you have you decide, I'm not sure if I think it's a half mile to a mile is kind of like the buffer zone. So then you get all the information for all the sites nearby, but you don't really go further than that. So it can be limited. So when you're looking at the gray literature, it's hard because you're really looking at only a few sites in the entire landscape. So trying to piece all those gray literatures together that happen in separate places is kind of a challenge, but Dennis Gallegos was able to give a lithic analysis of lots of different sites and commentary on lots of different sites in the area. So that was very helpful. But so if you look at the photos here on the right, these are a variety of these SEUTs or scrapers. So the steeped edge unifacial tools that are found in Otay Mesa. And like I said, it is the predominant tool type in Otay Mesa. I would say, I've worked in a lot of places in the region, and I have never seen a place that has so many Santiago Peak Metavolcanic scrapers or these SEUT tool types. Otay Mesa, they're everywhere. And so Dennis Gallegos in his case study has this image here of how it's produced. So I'll just go through it first. You have the nodule, which is in bipolar, and then you got the split nodule. And then it kind of turns into like a core, how they take flakes off of the side. And then you have this nodule core. And then from the nodule core, you can either change it to a steeped edge unifacial tool, which, like I said, there's one right there on the screen, and then, or it can change into a battered implement. What's interesting here is that steeped edge unifacial tools could also be a battered implement. It could have started as a battering implement and then changed into a steeped edge unifacial tool, vice versa. There's an interesting relationship between the two of those. And then, of course, you have the usable debitage that you can take for later, and then the flake tool. So the continuum of SEUT. So continuum means the life cycle. I also got that from Dennis Gallegos, thank you. So continuum means life cycle. So when I talk about the life cycle of a tool, I'm talking about from when it's quarried all the way until it's disposed or left, or even, you can even say that the continuum can be that it's ended up in the center and then used by me. So it's this constant life cycle, but I'm really only focusing on in its prehistoric context. So why I decided to really focus on this for my dissertation is because I think there's something special about the Otay Mesa landscape because we have so many of these SEUTs and these scrapers. And what's really interesting about it for me is that the source and where it's left is the same place. So assuming that the raw material was quarried from Otay Mesa, which we're going to go into in the next section, the material was then knapped into a steeped edge unifacial tool. Those flakes were probably taken for later that they used to make it into the tool. And then the SEUT was used and utilized in that landscape, probably in the dense forest, and we'll go into that as well. So the SEUT was then used and utilized in that landscape. Then it was exhausted, not always though. And actually, if you like, I wonder if I'll show it later. So it wasn't always exhausted. And then the SEUT was disposed or left of, all in the same landscape. So to me, that kept coming up in the gray literature. And the reason I wanted to really focus in on this is, to me, that means that it must have been significant, that the people who lived during those times knew that they could go to the Otay Mesa landscape. They could easily quarry fine, high quality material and then use that material in a dense forest full of resources, all in the same landscape, and then not be worried that they needed to take that material with them or reduce it down further. They knew that they could leave it. And if they wanted to come back to use that source, that they could, because it was so abundant. So to me, the continuum of the SEUT and how we see it in the archaeological record is actually telling the story of how significant the area is. And that's and I'll go into more detail as we go further, but that's kind of where I want you guys' minds to go for this landscape. So the XRF fluorescence XRF analysis. So the reason I brought XRF into this was, one, it was a suggestion and from Cindy, and she hooked me up with Eric Cathcart. And Eric Cathcart is a professor at USD, and he has been doing studies, XRF sourcing Santiago Peak Metavolcanic and Black Mountain, and a few other of the major sources. So I thought it'd be interesting because in the gray literature, it is assumed that it's logically assumed that the material, where there is perfect material, and the material that they're finding in the archaeological record, the geologic source and the archaeological record, it's the same, it's coming from the same Otay Mesa source. But I really wanted to test that and to see if there was a way we could really prove that, because the landscape would be much different if we ended up testing this and finding out that it was actually half of the artifacts were from Black Mountain. So XRF, what it is, that's a portable XRF machine right there that we used at USD. And XRF is used to determine the chemical composition of a solid, a liquid, or a powder. So basically, you put this in this machine, you hit it down. It's actually a pretty easy to use machine. And then it produces an Excel sheet that shows you all the chemical values for about, I want to say, probably 30 chemicals, or what it can determine, and tells you what their chemical signature is. So what we decided to do was to go to O'Neill Canyon, which is a canyon I know has high quality Santiago Peak Metavolcanic material on BLM land, and which is an interesting story in itself, because the Border Patrol in Otay Mesa is very active. So if we have time, I can explain it more. But what we decided to do, and Eric Cathcart has a permit to collect. So we went to this canyon and we collected multiple sources. This picture is a few of the Santiago Peak metavolcanics, and also just kind of volcanic material that we collected from inside the canyon. And then we compared them. So we put those through the XRF, we powdered them down, and then got the XRF, or the chemical signature for those. Then I chose around 23 SEUTs that I received from the Archaeological Center, that were found in Otay Mesa, and then compared their chemical signatures. Of course, I didn't damage the artifacts. But the good thing about this machine is you can put it directly inside, so you don't actually have to powderize any. There's no destructive element for the artifacts themselves. So we compared all their chemical composition, and interestingly, the results are not completely conclusive. So this is the part that's a little interesting to explain. So Eric Cathcart, he did the majority of the analysis. I cleaned up the data, and then he helped me kind of go through, because this is what he does. And he basically explained that from what he saw, he can tell that all of the SEUTs that we sampled are from the same area. That's one thing that we can say. They have the same chemical composition. But the thing about XRF and about Santiago Peak Metavolcanic is the other sources have a very unique indicator that they're from that area. So like, for example, Black Mountain Santiago Peak Metavolcanic is full of arsenic, and it's very noticeably full of arsenic. So if any of those, if anything comes up in the radar, it's a tool, and they put it through the XRF and it comes up as a lot of arsenic, they can pretty much assume that it was from the Black Mountain source. And it's the same for Forest Ranch and others. They have other chemicals that are like their unique identifier. Otay Mesa, and this could just be because, once again, this was done in 3 months. All of this was done in like 35 months. This could have been because we need more time, but we weren't able to find a unique indicator. But that's kind of the thing. Interestingly, because we couldn't find a unique chemical indicator, then we could conclude that those SEUTs were not from another major source. So if we follow that, so basically it's the process of elimination, because we know that all the SEUTs that we tested didn't come up high in arsenic or any of these other identifiable unique chemicals from other sources. We know that it can only come from a different source. And the only other source that hasn't really been figured out all the way is Otay Mesa. So we cannot say 100% that these SEUTs came from that Otay Mesa region, but by process of elimination and also just using the same logic as the gray literature, we can safely make an educated guess and assume that they did come from that Otay Mesa landscape. The SEUTs that are found in Otay Mesa are coming from the Otay Mesa geologic formation or source. So what does this all mean? Because I know I went through a lot of information. Basically, my interpretation of this is if you go back and you look at, if you kind of take in consideration, there's a dense forest full of resources. And then you also have an abundance of high quality, easily quarried lithic material like Santiago Peak Metavolcanic. And you combine that knowledge with knowing that a lot of these tools are being left in the environment after their use, and that the entire continuum and every event that's happened prehistorically, it's happened within the same landscape. To me, that all points to that Otay Mesa landscape was probably a taskscape or a production hub in the early and middle Holocene, where I believe people would have known, like in my idea, it's that the meaning of the prehistoric people is that Otay Mesa is a place they knew that they could go, that there would be an abundance of resources and they could get what they needed. And I think that's really significant, that if there's a place that they know that they could go that would be kind of maybe not stress-free, but something where they're like, oh, I've got everything that I need to do what I need to do right here. And that they didn't feel like they had to take that material with them. It was just something like that they knew that they could go. And to me, that's really significant. Another interesting thing, and this is something that I was wondering in my dissertation, but couldn't really make a fully formed thought for it, was that because of how much SEUT production is happening in Otay Mesa compared to the rest of the county during early and middle Holocene, I'm wondering if the Otay Mesa landscape and SEUT production are kind of like synonymous with each other. And this is a big leap, but if you think about when you go to the beach, you make a sandcastle. When you go to a baseball game, you eat peanuts and a hot dog. It's like that kind of mentality where you have this object and it's associated with a place. And I'm wondering if SEUT production itself was kind of synonymous with Otay Mesa. Of course, SEUT does like scrapers and SEUT happen all through San Diego County, but I'm meaning that maybe the prehistoric people knew that when they go into Otay Mesa, that making a SEUT is the best technique, lithic technique, to be able to procure what they needed to in that landscape. So like I said, there was a lot to go through. And yeah, I will go ahead and just say, if there's any other questions, just real quick before we do any questions, I wanted to go ahead and just go over these pictures. This is a battering implement that I had mentioned before. So I showed pictures of the SEUT, but this is actually like a battering implement, or it's been labeled as a battering implement. And this picture on the left-hand side of your screen is what the Santiago Peak Metavolcanic looks like when it's just like a tablet nodule form. So you can see there's kind of like this white chalky, and this one might have possibly been worked. We didn't mess with it very much. We just wanted to take a picture of it. But so that's kind of what it looks like. And if you were to hit that, it would be, green or blue in the inside and very fine grain. So questions? Let me see if I can. Stephanie, is there a way that sorry, if people are putting something in the chat, I can't find it. I don't know if I.
I've got a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
How do you know there was a forest in Otay Mesa?
So by the paleo reconstruction of the area, they had done a few, and like I said, I'm happy to send out a copy of my dissertation to anyone, because I had to go over so much of the information. So a lot of the evidence itself I wasn't able to bring in. But the paleo environment has been studied during archaeological excavations, the pollen analysis and isotope analysis. So they've been able to look at the soil and see that there is pine pollen and oak pollen during a certain time, and they can see how it's gone away over time. And that's kind of how they know, okay, there must have been a pine forest in Otay Mesa because we're finding so much of the pollen. That's kind of how it happens.
Are there obvious quarry sites?
You know, I know that there are quarry sites in the archaeological record, but I have not been able to visit them myself. The place that we went to for the sample collection, that was, I'm not sure if it's totally obvious. I think there are some spots that are quite obvious, but really when you're walking on the ground, it becomes obvious because you're walking, and if you know what that material looks like, which the prehistoric people would have known, that you have that white chalky cortex, they would have known if they hit that open, that you'd have some really fine grained stuff. So when you're walking along the ground in Otay Mesa, you can find those tablets just on the surface. And if you know what you're looking for, then you can easily get them.
This is Marty Rosen. There have been quarry sites have been recorded in the Otay Hills, the Otay Mountains have been recorded up there. And I suspect that a lot of the pine pollen comes from the mountains, not from the flat mesa area.
Well, yeah, that's kind of why.
There's almost no soil accretion on the mesa. It's all millions and millions of years old. You know, it's fossil rich deposits. We're talking 40 million year old deposits. And yeah, so the Otay Mesa smear is simply a reflection of what's coming out of the mountains and essentially moving westward all the way to the beach. My 2 cents anyway.
Yeah, no, I guess I should have gone over that a little bit more. When I'm referring, so the landscape itself, I am seeing that from where I've seen the quarry, they go up on the mountain. And it's also that you can find the tablet nodules on that alluvial kind of area from the mountain. But the mountain should be included in that landscape. Like I said, that map that I had of the landscape is really fluid. When I talk about the prehistoric Otay Mesa landscape, what I'm really trying to refer to is it's an area they knew that would have, to them, it would have been this, like to me, it would have been the same place. So they would have known they could go to that quarry and then go up the hill. So like it would have been one thing. So it would be a part of the same landscape, even though it's separate, you know, environmental landscapes, but it would have been the same cultural landscape, in my opinion.
When I was in Tim Gross's class, we talked about use wear. Hi, Tim. We talked about use wear. Did you do any use wear analysis of your scrapers?
I didn't get a chance to.
Bone or wood or?
So I didn't get a chance to, but Dennis Gallegos, and like I said, I really wish I could have gone into more detail, but I had so much material. Dennis Gallegos, in his case study, they talk about doing those studies, and it does reveal that there's, oh, you know what, I wrote that down, I forgot to say it. There is wood, so they've done residue studies, and there's wood, there's animal residue, there's other veg residue, there's a lot of things they found on those, but definitely wood. So I'm thinking that the idea is that the SEUTs were used for wood. That's been kind of the consensus for a lot of the gray literature that I've read, is a lot of these in Otay Mesa were specifically used for the oak trees, to be used on the oak trees. And I think they were probably used for multiple things. I think it was just one of those areas they knew they could go straight to the quarry, grab what they needed, produce what they needed to get the resources on the hill. And then it was kind of like this one-stop place, this little production hub, a task space.
Does the Arc Center have any wooden artifacts? I've seen some that are modern. Do we have any to know what they might have been making?
I guess that would be up to Stephanie. I don't think there's any like early Holocene or middle Holocene wood artifacts. That's actually one of the issues too, is that we this analysis I'm looking at the lithics, but what if this tool was really just made to make another tool, which is totally a possibility. Well, of course, that's probably what it did, but what I mean is that it was really just made in order to make wooden tool. That's a possibility. So that's the thing about these SEUTs, is that their function, we call them scrapers, but they really could be multiple things. They could have been used to chop wood. They could have been used for tanning. They could have been used really for a lot of things. So that's why they're an interesting tool type for that region.
Jim, we can check on that for you. If you shoot me an email, sorry, had some tech issues here. Shoot me an email and I will look into that for you.
I just never seen any wood collections there, but I know.
Yeah,
some wooden-
Jim,
wooden
to my
collections.
knowledge, we don't, but historic we do. I haven't seen any prehistoric wooden artifacts though, but possibly.
We just don't have the right, like rock shelters or the right types of site where that kind of preservation exists, really.
So Haley, I wanted to point out that the quaternary geology of Otay Mesa is somewhat complex. Consider Mima mounds. There are also there's some fairly well developed soils in places. There's also the Normal Heights mudstone, which is a late quaternary pond deposit that suggests that there was standing water at times. So it's really kind of a complex story, and I think that saying that there were forests there is not that far-fetched, based on how diverse that quaternary record is for that area.
It's funny that you bring that up, because something I wanted to get into in my dissertation but could not, did not have the word count, and wanted to get into here, but I couldn't. One thing that we discovered when we were there was something Eric was really interested, because we lapidaried a few of the samples, and this one in particular, it looks like an agate, and he was really confused because, well, not confused, but he was really interested in the fact that there is a line that goes around the rind that looks just like an agate. It just looks like water. So I'm wondering if even that Santiago Peak volcanic formation, why in Otay Mesa it's so fine grained is actually that it's not that it's meta, it's that it was produced with some, like how you were describing, like a water, there was a water effect, and that's the reason. Because some of the Otay Mesa metavolcanic that we've been finding, that we find the material that archaeologists call metavolcanic, it's so hard that it's not actually, it's further than a flint napping quality. It's too hard. So I'll just go ahead. Sorry, I'm just going to use my finger. But if any of you can see kind of that the layering around the cortex, it doesn't show up in every single sample, but geologically it's really interesting, because it's suggesting that it's not really getting that fine grained because of metamorphose or because of anything else, but because of water. So yeah, Eric was, I think if you're ever curious, Eric Cathcart, he's got a lot of different papers, and I think eventually he wants to write about the Otay Mesa area, and he was really interested in that in Otay Mesa. So, and that's something else I go into in my dissertation, but could not go into here, is the terminologies the geologists and archaeologists use is quite different. So what we're calling metavolcanic could really just be volcanic. And terminologies in geology and archaeology can kind of actually be kind of harmful to our research, because we just assume. That's why I don't like the word scraper, because it's just saying, oh, they're scrapers, but it could be so much more complex than that. So yeah.
Yeah, but these rocks are pre-batholithic, so they were affected by the emplacement of the Peninsula Range as
Like
batholiths.
that. And metamorphosed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still learning about the geology. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask Tom that with all the paleontology effort down there, have you ever found any petrified wood or leaf impressions that would indicate the presence of a forest?
In the Pliocene deposits, we do have leaf impressions that suggest oak. I can't remember the assemblage. I'd have to look at that flora, but no wood that I'm aware of. But that's in the San Diego Formation, the Pliocene, late Pliocene. We do have Pleistocene vertebrates from there, horse and. Just today, I think Pat Sena found some proboscidean down there, parts of a proboscidean down at the west end of Otay.
Oh, wow.
But we do have Macedon from kind of an early Pleistocene site on Otay Mesa. So it's, I'd have to look. I can't recall all the details about it. But there is somewhat of a floor, but I would say that the pollen is probably the best source of information for what was going on there. And
Yeah.
I'm aware that the Otay Mountains have pine forests. I know they have, what is that characteristic tree, a cypress or a juniper or something? I can't remember what that is.
Toddy cypress.
Pardon me?
Yeah, Tacati
Toddy
cypress.
Tacati cypress, right.
Yeah, there's any other questions? I know I went through a lot of material and I feel like I haven't really represented my full dissertation. I tried, but it's a lot. And especially because it's the kind of dissertation that I had to go into the gray literature and what was available in the gray literature and try to, come up with a new idea and including XRF. But if anyone isn't interested in XRF, it's a pretty interesting, it's getting really popular in archaeology for sourcing. But yeah.
Well, Haley,
Hi.
quickly, can you get I'd like to get a hold of you afterwards. I have neutron activation data on
Oh, do you?
a sample all over the top of Otay Mountain.
Okay.
John Hildebrand got us a neutron activation grant for ceramics and lithics. And about the same week that we got the okay on the grant, I got a contract to do through Athanas to do roads on Otay Mountain, which meant we had to hike all the roads, which meant we got to sample all the way along. So we got a bunch of good samples there, as well as Black Mountain and some other sources. So I'd like to talk to you and Eric about that.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'd like to get a copy of your dissertation.
What was that?
I'd like to get a copy of your dissertation as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, like I said, the dissertation, the reason it came about is really because I've worked in CRM for a very long time, and it's not, CRM doesn't have bad archaeologists. It's the process. Sometimes the way that things are recorded, it's not always super representative of really what the cultural landscape may have been, and that's just the way it is. If we really were to look at everything as a cultural landscape, construction would be impossible. So in order to comply with all of the laws, but I think it's still important. I think especially because Otay Mesa is just a really interesting landscape. I really like Otay Mesa, and I think just the amount of those SEUTs and the scrapers that you find in the soil there is just unbelievable, and I think that just says something about the significance of the area in comparison to other spots in San Diego. I mean, if anyone knows of other areas that has that many SEUTs that are found, I would love to hear about it, because Otay Mesa is the only place I've worked where I've seen the abundance of those SEUTs, and really nothing else, maybe some flakes, and it's just these SEUTs that are just there.
I would think that the Forest Ranch area near Black Mountain would be a good area to look at to test the concentration of the steep edge unimarginal tools. Since you've got a lot of sites recorded there, and it's very close to sources as well. And in fact, you probably get the same sort of, as I recall, you get the same sort of effect of outwash, bringing down raw materials onto the terrace surfaces there, or the mesa tops there.
Yeah, so I'll send you a copy, Tim, and if anybody else wants a copy. Once again, this is unpublished and written in 3 to 5 months, but I'm proud. I'm happy that at least I was able to, for me, represent the Otay Mesa landscape in a different lens than what we get to do as archaeologists a lot of times in CRM. We don't get to look at things in a huge landscape, not usually. We look at things in a half-mile, 1 mile buffer. We try to bring in the rest of the landscape, but it's difficult. So I'm glad that at least I got to kind of do that, because yeah, I think Otay Mesa is a special place in San Diego.
Well, I thank you, because CRM is one project to the next project without doing synthesis. So it's dependent upon students earning degrees to provide a lot of the synthesis that we need. So thank you.
Yeah, there's been some of the great literature was really detailed. Like some of Mary's, some of your stuff was really detailed. I used a lot of Mary's stuff, and Sam, I saw you in there a few times. I used a lot of your stuff. And Dennis Gallegos, he was able to write that that report, and it was thick. And I'm really glad I had that as well, because he really elaborated. But yeah, it's unfortunate that the CRM archaeologists always get that opportunity, even though if we want it, it's not always something we can do. So yeah, I agree.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Haley, for sharing your research with us today.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to me and my babble. I appreciate it. I tried to keep, this is the first time I've ever done this, so I'm glad I definitely see some familiar faces. Like Jim and Mary and everybody else. I can't see everybody, but I'm really happy that I get to do this in front of you all. And thank you for being my first like actual lecture crowd. So thank you.
And just as a reminder, if anybody else has further questions, they can either email Steph or Haley, and we will make sure we pass them along. So once again, thank you everyone for attending today's Brown Bag session. And for more information on other upcoming events in this series and our living room lectures, please see our website, sandiegoarchaeology.org. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Haley.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Stephanie, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll just wait till people go.
Sorry, let's see here. I'm going to stop the recording though. Let's stop that.